A collision that McLaren never saw coming. Two teammates fighting each other harder than the opposition. A radio blackout that set the paddock on fire. And a team left embarrassed under the lights of Singapore. When the checkered flag fell, McLaren's race looked immaculate on paper: third for Lando Norris, fourth for Oscar Piastri, a strong haul of points, and another double top four finish in a season of dominance. But inside the team's radio channels, something cracked. What should have been a moment of celebration became a moment of silence that said everything. As Zak Brown came over the airwaves with his usual warmth, "Fantastic job, guys. Brilliant work, both of you." The first response came exactly as expected. Norris, calm and professional, said, "Thanks everyone, great job." Then came Brown's turn to praise the other side of the garage. "Oscar, great work out there, that was a solid, static." Silence. The feed cut. For the millions watching at home, it was a small technical glitch, gone in a second. For those inside the garage, it was seismic. Oscar Piastri hadn't lost his connection. He had chosen to end it. He'd pressed the radio switch, cutting communication mid-sentence, not in anger, but in clarity. It was a decision that came from deep within a driver's psychology, the kind that transforms frustration into a statement. In a sport where every sound is monitored, every word recorded, silence is the one thing that cannot be managed. Andrea Stella didn't move. He just stared at the monitors, his expression frozen. He knew exactly what had happened. This wasn't defiance for show, it was something more powerful: control. Piastri, the quiet, methodical driver who had spent his career mastering restraint, had finally used silence as his weapon. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't complain. He simply stopped talking. In Formula One, that kind of silence is more dangerous than anger, because it isn't impulsive. It's intentional. Within minutes, the world outside McLaren's garage noticed. The clip hit social media, dissected from every angle by fans, pundits, and journalists. Radio silence became the phrase of the weekend. Some called it immaturity. Others called it courage. But everyone agreed on one thing: it was symbolic. For the first time since the McLaren resurgence began, the perfect partnership had fractured. The calm, professional exterior that had defined the team gave way to an undercurrent of rivalry and resentment. In the debrief that followed, the atmosphere was cold, almost clinical. Engineers went through tire wear, brake balance, energy deployment, all the standard reports. Norris spoke as he always did: direct, efficient, professional. Piastri was equally calm, but detached, answering questions with short, measured replies. There were no confrontations, no raised voices. Just distance. A kind of silence that filled the room even when people were speaking. Stella listened, taking notes, but he knew data couldn't fix this. You can realign suspension geometry in 10 minutes. Realigning trust takes months. That night in Singapore was the moment McLaren's internal illusion of perfection ended. It wasn't a crash, it wasn't a scandal, it was a single, deliberate moment of silence that revealed everything they tried to suppress. Piastri had reminded the world, and his own team, that emotion still lives inside the most sophisticated machines on the planet. And in Formula One, emotion doesn't just drive performance. It decides destiny. McLaren's success story over the past 2 seasons had been built on a fragile masterpiece: 2 drivers of immense talent, equal machinery, and perfectly balanced egos. Under Andrea Stella's leadership, the team had created an ecosystem where competition fueled progress, not conflict. Every race was a demonstration of order amid chaos. But in Singapore, that balance collapsed. It wasn't the kind of collapse that comes with shouting or blame. It was quieter, deeper, and more dangerous. The contact between Norris and Piastri was minor, barely a scratch on either car. Yet the emotional damage was immediate. Inside that brief brush of tires, every unspoken tension surfaced. Norris, now the senior driver, racing with growing authority, had spent the season reinforcing his position as McLaren's future. Piastri, the meticulous newcomer, had built his reputation through precision and calm resilience. They respected each other, but respect doesn't erase ambition. In Singapore, that ambition finally broke through the surface. When Piastri's voice reached the pit wall, "That's not very team-like. That's not fair." It wasn't anger, it was disappointment. His words were the product of disbelief, not aggression. He had trusted the team's system, trusted the rules that kept their rivalry clean. The response he got, "Understood, we are reviewing," was logical but lifeless. To a driver fighting instinct and adrenaline, logic feels like indifference. And in Formula One, indifference is poison. From that point, the issue was no longer mechanical. It was psychological. Piastri's rhythm on track remained sharp, but the trust between cockpit and command cracked. His tone on the radio flattened, the warmth was gone. Strategy calls that once sounded collaborative now felt transactional. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the public, but inside the garage, the engineers could feel it. Formula One teams operate like living organisms. When one connection weakens, the whole body reacts. Meanwhile, Norris carried on with professional precision, his focus unbroken. For him, the incident was already over. He saw a racing touch, nothing more. But in his determination to move forward, he left a gap that data couldn't quantify. It wasn't a gap in lap times, it was emotional distance. He didn't mean to create it, but he did. That gap, between two drivers who had once moved in rhythm, was the true start of McLaren's crisis. The real problem for McLaren wasn't contact between cars. It was contact lost between people. The engineers fixed the setup. The mechanics checked the bodywork. But no one could repair what had broken between the drivers. In Formula One, you can measure everything: downforce, temperature, drag, but not disappointment. And in that unmeasured space, McLaren's greatest weakness was revealed: perfection on paper, and fracture in the heart. Singapore should have been the ultimate validation of McLaren's engineering philosophy. The MCL39 was a triumph of precision, efficient through the slow corners, resilient over the curbs, and thermally balanced against the brutal humidity of Marina Bay. The car wasn't just fast, it was predictable, obedient, and precise. It gave its drivers the kind of confidence that engineers dream of delivering. But Formula One, for all its data and discipline, remains an emotional sport. A car can be perfect, the humans inside it never are. The telemetry told a story that numbers alone couldn't explain. Norris's data was clean and assertive: late braking, sharp throttle control, and near total confidence through the mid-speed turns. He was driving on instinct, attacking every corner with purpose. Piastri's traces looked almost identical at first glance, but deeper analysis revealed something else. Small hesitations into the apexes. Marginally longer throttle delays. Micro-adjustments that reflected not uncertainty in the car, but unease in the mind. These were the invisible fingerprints of emotion, showing up in the one place where emotion shouldn't exist: the data. Inside the McLaren garage, the engineers could see everything: engine maps, tire wear, fuel delta, everything except the one variable that truly mattered: trust. To them, both drivers were delivering performance that bordered on perfection. The lap times were close, the strategy flawless. But the connection between car, driver, and team, the delicate rhythm that makes a team unbeatable, had broken its flow. For the first time all season, McLaren's two cars were running as individuals, not as instruments of a shared machine. That dissonance was subtle, but it rippled through the team. Engineers spoke more carefully, strategists hesitated before transmitting instructions, even the radio tones grew cautious. It wasn't fear, it was awareness. The collision had left no physical damage, but it had disrupted the emotional synchrony that makes elite teams feel like extensions of a single mind. McLaren, a team renowned for clarity and calm, was suddenly operating with tension in its own system. What made this crisis even more striking was the irony behind it. The MCL39 was designed to remove human error: stable under braking, gentle on tires, balanced in crosswinds. It was a car that minimized uncertainty. Yet that very perfection made the cracks in communication more visible. When a car performs flawlessly, there's nowhere for emotion to hide. Every doubt, every silence, every pause on the radio becomes magnified. The car worked. The people around it didn't. After the race, when the data debrief began, the technical reports looked immaculate. Tire degradation within predictions, energy recovery flawless, fuel efficiency optimal. On paper, McLaren had executed a perfect race. But Andrea Stella knew the truth hidden between the lines. The numbers couldn't show the fracture in unity, the hesitation in voices, the silence that had replaced teamwork. The engineers could fix anything mechanical, carbon fiber, sensors, hydraulics, but they couldn't engineer trust. And that, more than any broken part, was the real failure in Singapore.